Whoever created the tradition of not seeing the bride in the wedding dress beforehand saved countless husbands everywhere from hours of dress shopping and will forever be a hero to all men. Anxiety is like when video game combat music is playing but you can't find any enemies. 11 babies have been born in Antarctica, and none of them died as infants, meaning Antarctica has the lowest infant mortality rate at 0%. When you're a kid, you don't realize you're also watching your mom and dad grow up. Everyone hates being sung happy birthday, and everyone hates singing happy birthday. So what the fuck are we doing here? Dad's probably born with dogs so much because, in our society, men don't get shown a lot of affection but dogs give tons of affection regardless. We laugh at dogs getting excited when they hear a bark on TV. But if TV was a non-stop stream of unintelligible noises and then someone suddenly spoke to you in your language, you'd be pretty fucking startled too. Girls don't compliment guys because they're likely to take it non-platonically. Guys take it non-platonically because it happens so infrequently they don't know how to handle it. The biggest flex is using mobile data in your own home because the Wi-Fi is being slow. If EA suffers big enough losses from the backlash of Battlefront 2. And it all started because some guy couldn't unlock Vader. This will be the second time Anakin brought balance to something. Being able to do well in high school without having to put in much effort is actually a big disadvantage later in life. Pavlov probably thought about feeding his dogs every time someone rang a bell. It would be cool if after you died you could see the top 5 times you almost died. It kinda makes sense that the target audience for fidget spinners lost interest in them so quickly. Avatar, the highest-grossing film of all time, seems to have made zero impact on culture. No one references the movie and no one really talks about it since it was released 10 years ago. A guy named Weird Al has had a 40-plus year-long career with no allegations of sexual impropriety. The Olympics is the only time when you hear great execution by North Korea, and it seems okay. If we look back, Pornhub has been one of the most innovative video sharing websites. They have had permanent dark mode for years. They popularized the preview setting where you can watch the video without starting it. And still are one of the few to have like-dislike percentage on display. During a nuclear explosion, there is a certain distance of the radius where all the frozen supermarket pizzas are cooked to perfection. Most people know so little that if they were transported 200 years into the past, they wouldn't be able to invent anything any quicker. The sentence "don't objectify women" has women as the object of the sentence. Somebody at Google was just like, yeah, just have someone drive down every road on fucking earth. College students don't want to go to graduation ceremonies, but they go to please their relatives, while relatives don't want to go but go to support the students. We should all just be honest and skip that ceremony and go out for pizza. There is probably at least one white guy, adopted and raised in China, who speaks English with a Chinese accent and strangers just assume he's a total asshole. Apparently, a lemon is not naturally occurring and is a hybrid developed by crossbreeding a bitter orange and a citron. Life never gave us lemons. We invented them all by ourselves. Being 35 and not wanting to work in the field for which you've prepared is like being halfway through an RPG and realizing you've built out your skill tree all wrong and you can't respec in. You can't make a new character and there will never be another video game again. In the anime, Ash Ketchum was supposed to be a huge Pokemon fan before he left on his journey. But every time he sees any kind of Pokemon, he has to pull out his Pokédex because he doesn't know what it is. Ash Ketchum was a puzzle before he left on his journey. The internet both almost killed off the postal service with email and then made it more needed than ever with online delivery. The spiders that live in Buckingham Palace now are probably the descendants of the spiders that lived there during Victorian times. It's a whole parallel royal family but with spiders. Lamps in video games use real electricity. Biting your tongue while eating is a perfect example of how you can still screw up. Even with decades of experience, both sexes can pack a Pringles can, but neither can do it well. Since there are 3,600 seconds in an hour, and most people make less than $36 per hour, their time is worth less than a penny per second. It's literally worth your time to pick up a penny from the ground. The syllables in "on your mark, get set, go" are a countdown. Security at every level of an airport is absolutely ridiculous. Until you get to the baggage claim. Then it's just like take whatever bag you want. Coffee makes you hyper, but coffee shops are designed for people to chill. Whereas alcohol is a depressant, but bars and clubs are designed for people to be energetic. Night before a day off is more satisfying than the actual day off. Being a real grown-up isn't cooking a fancy dinner. It's having a clean kitchen when you go to bed after cooking a fancy dinner. This spring forward thing would be a lot more popular if we moved the clocks ahead at 2 p.m. on Monday. Stan Lee's funeral is going to be a reversed cameo where all the superheroes appear in the background of his story. Google Earth is one of the most incredible things ever created by man, but is taken for granted as if it were nothing. In the Harry Potter universe, couples could take polyjuice potion and swap bodies, then have sex to see what it's like from both perspectives. Watching a graduation ceremony is like sitting through a movie that's entirely end credits. It must suck to be an air conditioner repairman. You spend your day working in buildings that have no air conditioning. When it's fixed and finally cool, you leave. Thermometers are speedometers for atoms. If Eminem's mom wanted to, she could probably make a good amount of money selling her own spaghetti sauce. The biggest form of peer pressure as a kid wasn't drugs, alcohol, or cigarettes. It came during exams when it was completely silent and you heard everyone turn to page 2 while you were still on the first question. One of the most frustrating feelings in the world is being smart enough to know there's a better way to do something, but not smart enough to invent a way to do it. We give rude elderly people the benefit of the doubt because they've been through a lot. But there's a decent chance that old person has been an arsehole their whole life. Smoking kills you, but the actual act of smoking is a very healthy practice. Leave a stressful environment. Go outside for 5 minutes and take deep breaths. Manuals for TVs are regarded as useless. But in 5,000 years they are as valuable as the Rosetta Stone. It contains the same text in over 2 different languages and alphabets. Tinder is the opposite of porn-site advertisements. There actually are a ton of hot singles in my area, but none of them are interested in me. The fact that the death of a scientist is headline news worldwide is in some ways the most fitting tribute Stephen Hawking could possibly have. At the age of 60, Snoop Dogg will be 420 in dog years. Being an adult is eating the crust not because you like it, but because you paid for it. Sunny D tastes like someone made a bet that they could make orange juice without oranges. Nobody cares if their deodorant is 24-hour or 48-hour, they are still going to apply it once a day. Baby Yoda's first word probably came after his second word. Telling a dangerously overweight person not to lose weight because they're beautiful is like telling an alcoholic not to stop drinking because they're fun. Running from the cops is the ultimate double or nothing. Talent shows like Britain's Got Talent become much more disturbing when you realize that it's just 4 rich people dangling money in front of poor people and telling them to dance for their entertainment. When people brokenly speak a second language, they sound less intelligent but are actually more knowledgeable than most for being able to speak a second language at all. There is no physical evidence to say that today is Wednesday. We all just have to trust that someone has kept count since the first one ever. The tallest person in the world has physically experienced being the exact height of every other person in the world at some point. The porn sites in the Star Wars universe must have so many categories. Your future self is talking shit about you. The first person who inhaled helium must have been so relieved when the effects wore off. A person wearing a suit in a room of the people in t-shirts is usually the most important person there. A person wearing a t-shirt in a room full of suits is more likely the most important person in the room. Wikipedia built the biggest modern information hub using nothing but nerds need to correct each other. If you were invisible, you could have a perfectly normal relationship with a blind person. Single-player games that don't require internet are going to be extremely valuable during the apocalypse. An onion is the base player of food. You would probably not enjoy it solo, but you'd miss it if it wasn't there. Anybody that questions why you are shoveling 6 inches of snow in the middle of a snowstorm hasn't shoveled 12 inches of snow at the end of a snowstorm. If people from the Star Wars universe ever came to Earth, the fact that it has deserts, rainforests, prairies, tundras and oceans would probably be a real mindfuck for them. Replying K in Moss has the same passive-aggressive tone. The weird, artsy loner usually gets the girl in movies instead of the jock, simply because many movies are written by weird, artsy loners. Both concrete and glass are mostly made of sand, which makes skyscrapers just really tall sandcastles. Monopoly would be more realistic if the person with the most money got to change the rules whenever they liked. Students often wonder why they have to learn so much stuff like science, chemistry, biology that they'll never use, while simultaneously wondering why adults are stupid enough to not believe in modern medicine. USPS could make more money if they put post offices in airports, so instead of throwing something out that you forgot was in your bag, you could mail it home. When medication says, do not operate heavy machinery, they're probably mainly referring to cars. But my mind always goes to forklift. Today is the Mondayest Thursday ever. The average car in space is nicer than the average car on Earth. If Wookiees have a 400-year lifespan, then Han Solo is basically like Chewbacca's third dog. An inheritance is just your relatives dropping loot when they die. If your school lends textbooks, teachers seem perfectly content in using ones published in 1999. If your school sells textbooks, then last year's editions are suddenly outdated, worthless pieces of trash. Social anxiety is basically conspiracy theories about yourself. Google Earth, in all its detail, is an unprecedented accomplishment for mankind. No one even 100 years ago, or less, would believe it could exist, but the fact that it is free is a world wonder. If you are alone when you crack open a peanut shell and eat the peanut inside, you are the only person in the world to have ever seen that peanut. Your thoughts could be in such a personalized coded shorthand that even if someone could read your mind, they wouldn't understand what the hell you're thinking. Maybe little kids have it right when they worship the garbage man, the postman, the guy who drives the semi and cranes, instead of admiring the cesspool of Hollywood that we adults seem to. We're lucky that our bodies require sleep. Otherwise our cultures would have us working 16 to 20-hour days. If you played the Pornhub community jingle in public, everyone will know you're watching porn, but no one will say anything because it will reveal that they know what the jingle's from. It would be weird if a human yelled out, anyone wanna fuck? But birds do it all day and nobody cares. When cell phones were new, it was cool to have a fun or interesting ringtone. Today, if your phone isn't permanently on silent mode, you're a scumbag. Doctor Strange is a movie about the importance of saving before a final boss. People are so amazed by the fact that every snowflake is different. But nobody cares that every potato is unique. The other day, someone said, Newton's rolling over in his grave in response to a basic physics mistake. But if Newton heard someone suggest his corpse could move without an external force acting upon it, he would roll over in his grave. If racehorses could comprehend that victory meant a lifetime of leisure and sex, they'd probably run even faster. If everyone on Earth died simultaneously, the internet would be comprised entirely of bots posting, liking, and upvoting each other. In one generation we went from, watch your mouth around grandma. She's from a different time, too. Don't mind all the stuff grandma says. She's from a different time. If you won the award of the first man to break 2 world records, that would make it 3 awards. And you win the award of first man to break 3 records. Now you have infinite awards. It's entirely possible that 2 random people on the internet have had a friendly conversation on one forum and later an aggressive hateful conversation on another forum, without ever knowing of their previous wholesome interaction. Bob's Burgers would also be an appropriate title for SpongeBob SquarePants. Condoms are made by automated assembly lines, meaning robots are literally helping to prevent human reproduction. The movie industry considers you to be an adult when you're 17 to see a rated R movie. But they conveniently lower that age to 13 when they are deciding who pays adult ticket prices. The fact that we can't fully control our own organs and bodily functions is like we don't have admin privileges of our own bodies. J.K. Rowling changing aspects of Harry Potter 22 years after it was written is the equivalent of coming up with a good comeback a few hours after the argument's already finished. There is nothing better than realizing, right after you wake up, that you won't have to face repercussions for the terrible choices you made in your dream. The Viagra commercial always says, make sure your heart is healthy enough for sex. That's a really deep question if you think about it in more of a metaphorical way. Pinterest is like a virus that infected the Google image search. There are 2 types of car owners. The first is upset when it rains because the rain is getting their car dirty. The second is happy when it rains because the rain is getting their car clean. You know you're getting old when your parents start disappointing you, instead of you disappointing them. Amish girls have no way of knowing if it's a romantic candlelit dinner or just a regular dinner. Inside every 85-year-old man is an 18-year-old saying, what the fuck just happened? Expensive paintings are basically just trading cards for the rich. College students are simultaneously stereotyped for not getting enough sleep and for sleeping all the time. Too bad alcohol isn't heavily discounted the day after St. Patrick's Day the weekend is after Valentine's Day. You know who has more descendants than Genghis Khan? Genghis Khan's dad. Telemarketers have basically ruined the telephone as a tool for contacting people quickly because no one bothers to answer it anymore. Those choose your own flavor Coke machines are probably just there to gather marketing data. They see what the most popular flavors are so they can release bottled, canned versions. Posting newborns' weight and length makes childbirth rather too similar to fishing. Traditions are basically dead people peer pressuring us. Babysitters are teenagers who behave like grown-ups so that grown-ups can go out and behave like teenagers. All languages travel at the speed of sound. Sign language travels at the speed of light. You could throw a rock into a lake and be the last person to ever touch that rock until the end of time. Being middle class is when spending $100 is expensive but turning $100 isn't a lot of money. Quidditch at Hogwarts is paid to win. Due to the enormous difference in broom quality and the wealth gap between students, airline passengers would probably pay more for priority boarding than priority boarding. Growing up is realizing you get more joy out of seeing others open presents than you do from opening your own. In the 90s, we were taught to use plastic instead of paper to save the rainforest from deforestation. Now we are taught to use paper instead of plastic to save the ocean from pollution. If holy water kills vampires, then putting holy water in a humidifier is making holy gas. You just made a gas chamber for vampires. Quitting cable news is like quitting smoking. After a year without you, see how disgusting it really is. The man who invented the internet is 80 years old now. If you see him walk down the street, You think he's just another old dude who doesn't know how to use internet. Given that tickling yourself does not work the same as someone else tickling you, we really lucked out with masturbation. Being an adult is like one of those choose-your-own-adventure stories, but every option sounds terrible and costs way too much. If the earth is flat, maybe the dinosaurs live on the other side and we keep digging up their dead and buried. They don't let you smile in passport photos because they want you to look the same as if you were standing in line at customs for an hour.